Friday Live, that time again, 8:30 on a Friday morning. And I'm joined today by two wonderful people who I'm really excited to have a conversation with. And we're live on LinkedIn. Also, if you haven't seen our conversations before, check us out on YouTube and on Spotify now, which is quite cool. That feels awesome to say that out loud, doesn't it? But I'm joined by two wonderful people. Thank you both for joining, Thomas and Jo. Thomas, you would have known before. He's part of the consulting team here at Bailey & French. And joined by Jo today, who is a special guest. Am I allowed to say special guest? It feels like you're a special guest.
I mean, you've said it. You've got some height.
Yeah, it's not there now.
But sure, why not?
Tell us a little bit about you, Jo.
Yeah, thanks. Well, look, first of all, thanks for inviting me on. I was just saying to you, I didn't really know what I was signing up for, but I'm saying yes and I'm joining the conversation, mostly because all of the conversations I have with both of you are really interesting and positive, and I always feel good afterwards. So why not do that live on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
So yeah, why not challenge myself? But yeah, my name's Jo. I do a few things, but I spend most of my time working at MediaCom, who are a global planning and buying agency. I work in the people team there. I do less of the kind of operational, typical HR stuff, and I work in a project team, and I focus on well-being. I focus on kind of ways of working or projects and initiatives that really help our people work in a better way. It's a very broad kind of way of describing it, but maybe we'll get onto a bit more of the specifics later. I do that part-time, and then outside of that, I'm also a coach and I teach yoga as well.
You do, yeah. And we haven't been along to a class yet. We haven't been able to. But Thomas will go there at some point and tell me how it is.
I'd love that. I like that you're offering Thomas up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got to go first. Yeah. But thank you, Jo, for joining. And as you say, every conversation that we've had leading into this, and I sent you a quick message midweek just to go, hey, do you fancy joining? Because it'd be great to, as you said, have a really good start to the Friday conversation. So thank you. Your perspective is always really interesting on all things well-being and new working models and agile HR. So thank you. We don't have a specific topic today. So as you will know, anyone who's listened to us before, we sort of talk about the week, and we try and keep the focus on the week, what's been happening this week in the world of HR, in the world of business. And then just reflecting on some of the key themes that come out. So how is everyone this week? What's been happening?
England euphoria.
Coming home.
You can't not talk about it.
2 weeks in a row now, because the last LinkedIn Live we did was just off the back of the Germany.
It was
Germany win. I've got a segue. But from off of that, I can abstract that to a higher point to bring things back into the world of work. But I don't want to trample over Jo. How are you?
Oh, no, I'm happy to talk about that as well, because I think I've got an interesting kind of human point of view on that. But yeah, I'm fine, thanks. I'm a little weary, but overall okay. I've had a little bit of stress in the last couple of weeks, more so than I normally would. But yeah, ending the week feeling okay, and it's Friday, isn't it? So we made it.
We have that stress feeling is I don't know what it is. It's felt we're always quite busy, and we're always doing lots of really cool, exciting things. But it's felt like the pace has quickened in terms of decision making. Is that what you've seen as well? Kind of people, projects, things needing to get done before people go on breaks, a lot of people having breaks and kind of trying to tie things off before September trying to be kind of a relaunch, a re-energizing point and moment in time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, busy, that answer of busy. I try not to answer anybody now by saying, how are you? I'm really busy. I think at one point there was a very kind of busy currency, wasn't there? So I try not to answer with that. And I don't know, for me personally, the stress kind of levels have been kind of okay, like manageable, but for whatever reason, just feeling the pressure sometimes, I think, of like you say, making quick decisions, standing things up, or kind of getting to an answer, I think, quite quickly, particularly because I know we're in this kind of interim period where lots of people, teams, businesses are trying to work out what does this look like. But we are, we're in summer, and we're then, or what should be summer, doesn't feel like summer, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And kind of hurtling towards September or another deadline. So, and I think people are overwhelmed and tired. So that's been hard for sure. And not to talk about, I know this sounds like a very obvious, boring English thing to say, but I've had so many conversations this week where people have said, "Oh, we just need a little lift. We just need a little bit of sunshine." And it's really obvious, but it does have a massive impact on our mood, doesn't it? And what you can do in the evening. So I've gone off on a tangent there, but I think it's just a human thing, isn't it, that we all feel.
And that's definitely a trend. I wouldn't say that's just how you feel. I am noticing that in myself. I'm noticing that in the people that we speak to, and the football, coming back to that, the euphoria of England. And obviously we have an international audience here, but the feeling here in the UK has been one of euphoria. And therefore it feels like a weird mix of balance. There's this kind of struggle and stress and euphoria all happening at the same time.
Well, I think we needed it. We needed it, didn't we? And I think where it's that sense of kind of connecting people up, and just something outside of the normal day-to-day and the stresses and the strains to up and a bit of fun.
It's interesting. I've on all of these LinkedIn lives that I've done, and in a lot of the conversations that I'm having, I find myself talking with people about the influence that external contextual things happening across the country and in wider life, such as the sun coming out, or England beating Germany and then England beating Denmark, and the influence that those things have. The question for us and what we do, whether we are sort of consultants that move to different organizations or whether we're in-house, is how do we create that feeling, and how do we get those things sort of happening within the organization rather than relying so much on a historically flaky and unreliable England team to boost the mood of our people. And if we're from global organizations, then there are constantly the plates underneath us are constantly shifting. I know that, and something what you wanted to talk about today was a learning culture and learning cultures, which comes to mind for me because I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. I noticed Bumble, I don't know whether you two had seen this in the news, had announced that they were going to give their people a week off work as a sort of a burnout antidote. And first of all, to be clear, I think that what that says about the culture at Bumble, although I don't actually think that initiative is the solution to burnout. One, although rest does help. Two, and though I don't think that solution is the best thing for burnout, I think it says something about the culture that will have a knock-on effect. But something I'm not seeing is, or I do see a misunderstanding in burnout, and I think the role of stress in burnout is massively overplayed if you look at some of the research in the psychology of burnout, and the role of a learning culture is massively undervalued in its role in reducing and preventing and helping to overcome burnout. So I'm interested in some of your thoughts in terms of learning and learning cultures within organizations.
God, Thomas, there's so many things to unpick there. To your first point, I think that's true. Is and that's what I think a lot of people, teams, businesses are struggling with. How do we replace or recreate those cultural or those moments or those fun things, those interactions between people that just naturally happened when you're in an office? And I think that's why stress, burnout, overwork is really a problem and a challenge right now, because we're probably working more. So I saw a stat the other day, I think it was from the World Health Organization. They termed a phrase perma work, and we're on average, we're all working 3 hours more per day.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't sound surprising. I hope I've got that right from the World Health Organization. If not, I will dig it out and correct it. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Just from, it feels like we're all working longer. But I think we, you know, I come from the ad industry. That's where I spent most of my career and in before that in the music industry. I think that amount of work and the time and the kind of 24/7 on culture was always there, but we have stripped away all of the other things on top that kind of keep going. Like the little moments, like the team drinks, or that's very British kind of version of it, or the team away day, or the, you know, team sport that you might have done, or whatever it is. Those things, like you're saying with the football, that just kind of elevate people, fun back to it. So I wish we had an answer for that. I think what one thing we've been looking at doing, and we have done, is try to recreate some of that, but globally. So I work in a global role, so those things are very challenging. When you add all of these things, are more challenging when you add a layer of kind of global on top of that. But talking about kind of competition and culture element, one thing that we have done at MediaCom is run, and this talks to your L&D point as well, is we ran a kind of competition last year where everybody kind of did a fake pitch. So pitching is obviously a massive part of what we do, and we connected teams across the world. So we had teams within Europe working together, APAC, LATAM, US and Canada, different regions, all working on a brief together, all connecting virtually, and it was a massive competition, and it kind of created a bit of buzz, and we had a global winner, and so that's one example from that I've seen of trying to bring that in. And there's a bit of learning there, because you're learning to, you know, we developed some kind of, I hate to call it training because it sounds like good, but you know, it was some L&D around that as well. So I
love that. I love what I love about what you've just said is the fundamentals of what we do. What is the role? A lot of people have been kind of looking at their restructure of L&D and the role that L&D plays and HR plays. And I think you've just hit the nail on the head. It's about understanding the lay of the land globally, regionally, and locally, of course, especially as you're a global organization. But your influence on that environment cannot be underestimated. Like the football, as Thomas said, we cannot rely on England winning or getting to the final of the Euros every 5 years to boost us. But how can we create that environment, or how can we nudge that environment? How can we nudge leaders and nudge the people around them to portray certain behaviors? And I think when we talk about burnout and well-being, it's easy to get kind of lost in the kind of the tactics of well-being, right? We need to make sure that there's a kind of employee assistance program in place, and we need to make sure that there's XYZ in place, and those things are really important. And also we need to understand what that environment looks like and how to nudge it and how to build on it. So I like that example that you've just shared with us, Jo. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a first for us in terms of a project across the new business and the people team, the L&D team as well. So it had great results, the feedback that we had. I think what's interesting, or kind of what we're quite thoughtful about, is how do you do those things, but then not make it feel as though it's another thing for people to do. So we all love to, you know, we're all keen to, I'm certainly keen to like find solutions for people and put things in place. Like I said, that can be challenging when you're trying to do that for a large group of people and trying to get it right. But how do you do those things, or introduce new ways of working without it feeling like it's another thing on someone's list that they're feeling pressured to do? So we're always conscious of that. There's lots of different things going on locally, regionally, globally. So how do we get that balance right?
Yeah, and obviously there's lots of different nuances that you have to be really conscious of different laws and legalities, and I know that's something that's always a challenge with global organizations, coming up with global principles that then can trickle down and mean something regionally and locally. It's really interesting though, and I have seen this, kind of looking at more at the team level. Okay, well, we can't change things globally or even regionally necessarily. We can give guidance and we can make sure everything's in place, but we can't kind of make the horse go and drink the water kind of thing. But the team can, and the leader within the team can really influence that team, and then that team has a knock-on effect with who they're working with, and that positivity kind of bounces on. You think about kind of molecules when you're boiling water or something, and that energy, that positive energy bounces from one team to the next, and then you build momentum. It feels like that's what people are trying to do. I don't know. Maybe that's just me looking into things a little bit too deeply.
No, look, I think if that's what you're seeing, for sure, absolutely. And I certainly see that. I think it's how do you then, as a leader and a manager, manage your own, priorities as well as your own internal. How do you avoid burnout in providing that for your team as well? That's a challenge. You seem to do a lot of that kind of team energy bonding at Bailey and French. Do you have some good examples?
Yeah, good question. I think the approach with teams, what we're finding is it's about creating that sustained team environment that's really important. So well-being, inclusion, productivity, performance over time, cohesion, the way we feel together, this kind of sense of togetherness, the belonging. I have my unique strengths and I know the role that I'm playing within this team. All of those things are outputs of creating the right kind of environment for that team to thrive in. And there's some amazing research in team flow that is amazing, and I'd encourage people to go and look at that. Similar to how an individual experiences flow, right? So when we're in flow, time flies, and we kind of feel really engaged in our work, and we don't really notice because we're so involved in that. That has been shown to actually improve burnout, even though you're so focused on the work and will go the extra mile. So that's quite interesting. But then to experience that as a team, and that's the tough part, and there's certain conditions that you can build on. And teams, whether you're a bid team, market-facing team, whether you're kind of an internal product development team that needs to get things done, I think it's that agility, it's that kind of passion and agility and togetherness within that small team. And it would have to be a team, right? We're not talking 50 people, we're talking 12 or however many you kind of have. But Thomas, yeah, you look like you've got something to say.
Well, there's a really interesting distinction that I think particularly leaders need to be able to make in their minds. There's the group of people within the team, and then there is the team itself as its own distinct entity, and those two things aren't the same. So you were just talking about flow there, for example. We talk about individual flow and team flow. Team flow isn't a group of individuals all in flow together. So like there are the people within a team, and then there is the team itself. And so when we're talking about how do you energize teams, how do you create the right team environment, what that effectively means in practice is that, well, it means two things. First of all, the energy and the environment within a team can't be dependent upon one person, especially when we know that there's so much movement in the job market at the minute and people are like bouncing around. The energy is coming through movement of people more than anything else. So we can't be reliant on one or two people within the team, because even if they do, they remain. People aren't working in the same physical environments as much anymore, depending on the team. People are off sick, so there's a sustainability piece in there around not relying on hallmark individuals within the team. And the other thing is that the ways of working, and I know this is a lot of the stuff that you do, Jo, the ways of working become much more important. So processes and systems that remain consistent regardless of who is in the team. And it can sound, I know, sometimes depending on sort of the way you're wired, but processes and systems to some people can seem like the antithesis of exciting and energizing. but actually it is important to spend the time thinking about how logistically, operationally, and I suppose in the way that we actually work with each other, how we operate, so that there is a system in place that people can come out of, but that system and that way of working is protected, and that system is what brings energy, rather than solely the focus being how much individual people are injecting into the team. Although of course that is important as well. Does that make sense?
Definitely. There's a couple of thoughts coming up there for me. One is that I totally agree with you, and as someone who kind of, my background was in running pitches, so it was all about kind of project management and how do you I love kind of getting a good process nailed, because when it works well, you can see the impact on that team. I've been part of pitches where it's no one's getting any sleep and it's very stressful and it's last minute. You can feel that energy that comes through. Or I've seen it where where it's worked better in that way. And I think all those things that you're talking about in terms of process and ways of working and the operational kind of brilliant basics of a team, it just means your brain isn't having to focus on any of that stuff, and you're putting it to one side so that you're allowing the space for the team to then be thoughtful or creative or produce the work or work together. So that's how I would kind of see that. But I think it can be challenging, and I think we're still, I mean, even now I have different ways of working with different teams. So knowing what those different kind of rules are can be hard to do, because I think sometimes we're just in the delivery of something. We often don't have the time to say, hang on a minute, let's just pause and think about how we're doing this instead of what we're doing. But when you are able to kind of and do that, have those conversations and be able to get really specific and granular and say, well, actually, you're always communicating on email, but you're messaging me on Slack or Teams or whatever. Like those little moments of jumping between different communication channels can be a drain on energy and frustrating, and comes back to kind of different personality styles as well, and different ways of learning, different communication, different kind of the communication dynamics within a team. Slightly different point, but something else that came up as you were talking then, I find it really interesting how you described an individual's flow and then the team as an entity made up of these individual parts. And as someone so outside of MediaCom, I also run my own business coaching, that's the kind of, and it's been really an interesting process for me, and I've worked with other people or got different advice about it, and although it's only me, it's a one person entity. This idea of seeing the business as an energy and an entity in itself that is kind of moving, but you're driving it. So that for me, that was a really interesting shift in terms of, particularly when it's you on your own and what you're doing is you're putting yourself out there and you're, I don't know, selling a service or whatever it might be, or it's time with you. If you're a consultant, it might be the same case. But yeah, I just found that really interesting, because I think there's a way of applying that to a smaller independent business as well, to see that business as an entity. And how do you, still same question, how do you operationally set yourself up? Where do you find support or energy or tools and systems that help you then put all of that stuff to one side and focus in on the stuff that's really important and going to kind of drive you forwards?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. For me, there's one really important reason why we need to be able to view things as not just sort of the sum of their parts. We view an organization and we do this with big organizations anyway. We don't view Amazon as the collective of millions of people that work there. But when we get into some of those smaller structural layers, smaller organizations, one-man organizations, or teams, thinking about them as their own distinct entities and having that as a mental framework almost forces you to think about the needs of that thing slightly separately from the needs of the individual people. We need to be able to focus on both of those things, because like the needs of the people within a team or the needs of the people within an organization, there will be overlap, but those needs won't be exactly the same as the needs of the team those people are in, or the needs of the organization those people are in, because they're different. They're different things. It sounds like a really strange phrase, but a team is not a person, and so of course it needs different things, and it's only through conceptualizing them as those two distinct entities that we're able to dig in and work out how we actually get the best out of this thing, and then how we sort of are able to create the best environment for the people within it.
Love that. You have such a way of articulating such a complex thing and making it sound, amazingly achievable, actually. And let's build some habits now to go away and do that. And one of the things, Jo, that we find, and I don't know if you've found this in the teams and the people that you're coaching or working with while at MediaCom, but these motivations are changing so rapidly now, especially now. Like, things change anyway. Motivations change over time, and it's important that we keep in check with those. But I'm finding those motivations are changing almost on a weekly basis for people at the moment. One week I'm going, I'll definitely focus on this thing this week. And then next week I'm going, different challenge this week. This week it's a massive get fit and restart my football career. It's got nothing to do with me trying to get into the Gareth Southgate team, I'm sure. But motivations of the team change. The goals for the team can't change, I suppose, because it's organizationally led. Like, we need to achieve this, is the point of the team in this. But the individual motivations within that team will change quite rapidly, I think.
Well, listening to you there, I'm thinking about I think you're right, the goals can stay the same and what you're trying to achieve stays the same. But I think for me, what it's making me think about is, like, and this is what you talk about a lot so brilliantly at Bailey and French, like, we're all humans. And I loved what you said, Thomas, about, we think of Amazon as Amazon. Amazon isn't a kind of physical thing that you can go and meet and talk to. It's made up of millions of people, and on a day-to-day basis, we are, our emotions change, our experience of whatever's in front of us changes on a daily, hourly, often basis. So when you're saying there, Ant, about the goal is the same, the team is the same, the way you're working might be the same, but how those individuals experience that meeting on that day, in that moment, can be completely and utterly different for many different reasons. And I think I think a lot about, because I'm into yoga, and there's a lot in the philosophy of yoga about separating you from your emotions. When you feel something, when you're experiencing something, that is not you. That doesn't define you as a person for the rest of that day. So I find that really interesting in what you're talking about, to say, it's okay that, in that moment I felt frustrated, or I wasn't getting it, or on this day I'm not motivated, but the next day I am. But that can be hard, right? Because we like to feel like we're constantly kind of ready, we're on top of things, we're, thriving. I mean, that might seem like a bit ambitious right now. Maybe people feel like there's no way to thrive, but I don't know. That's how I would relate to that. Thomas, you're not doing so.
I think you've tapped into something that I completely agree with, and was going to say, and some of the people who work with me will have heard me sort of preach this approach before, but I think everything we're talking about now is the reason why it's so important to get to the heart of what is most important and useful for people. So when we talk about motivations changing and what people want changing every week, that's very much at a surface level. It's sort of like you go on you watch I hear myself in a minute. You go on you watch a nature documentary and the sea is really choppy, and then the camera goes under the water and it all looks still. And obviously there are undercurrents, but that is sort of at a surface level things change loads. At a deep level, those things are consistent. So we know what people's motivational needs are: autonomy, competence, relatedness, and people would throw meaning into that. If we're talking about well-being, we know what people's core well-being needs are. Gallup have their Q12 in terms of thinking about what do people need in order to be engaged at work. And so practically for leaders and HR teams, the deeper we go, the more sustainable and manageable it will be for you, because you don't have to, if you're able to tap into what people really need and what is really most important to people, then you in your strategy and your plans aren't having to cope with the fact that every single week what your people want is changing, because you're at a level where you're not getting those choppy seas.
This is, to take it out of the work context, this is reminding me of, often it's said, isn't it, when a couple have a fight, they're not really fighting about the thing they're fighting about. It's not about that. So how do you step away and kind of try and look at it objectively and think what's actually going on here?
Really going on
under the surface. Yeah.
I could continue for another half an hour speaking, at least another hour, to be honest. And maybe we should do another hour. Maybe we should keep this going another time, but I am going to have to stop us. Jo, that was really great getting your insight and your perspective on all things, even relationships at the end, relationships, yoga. We've had everything from you, so thank you. And Thomas, great insight. Love having you with me on the Friday morning. Thank you everyone who's been watching, and thank you to both of you.
Yeah, thank you both. It was a pleasure.
Same time next week, Friday, 8:30 every week. Bye.